Hey, great day, y'all. So in this video, I will be answering a question from a private practice group owner talking about how do you pay interns? Is there a particular best way, whether it be percentage versus flat rate? So let's go ahead and hop into this Car Chit Chat podcast episode. Hey, what's up, y'all? So I decided to answer this question on the public podcast. It came through in our Adult Therapist Academy Manifest a Profitable Private Practice program. However, I'm very, very selective with what types of questions I will answer, primarily because I do not want to overwhelm the clinicians that are in there simply to figure out how to pay themselves as a solo practitioner. And the program is built for the infrastructure and operating systems for a solo private practice. Now, what tends to happen organically is that the therapists that are in there either come in there with an existing group practice, but maybe they never had the systems for themselves. So they use our program as a check and balances, and then they move through our system quite swiftly if they can implement right away. And then, of course, we have the solo practitioners where they're either starting from scratch or they are at a plateau and they're wanting to stop treating their business like a side hustle and actually treat it like a business, private practice, and take things seriously. And so with that said, because our framework for our program, meaning our course journey, takes the clinicians on building out our operating systems, process for one person, it can become overwhelming if we start opening up, I call it Pandora's box, in that community, because it will overwhelm someone who that's either not their goal or that's not the reason why they joined the program. So I've talked about this topic before, but I thought it'd be time that I bring it back. So first, I want to talk about the differences between, I'm going to say, a group practice and being a clinical supervisor. So when you think about a clinical supervisor, this can happen typically in two different ways. Either you are, if you're the therapist, licensed with your supervising CEs and certifications, depending on your licensing board, you can either supervise interns at a site where you're employed or employed as a contractor, or on the other side, you can be hired by the clinical supervisees themselves, and then they pay out of pocket. That's what we know as clinical supervision. Now, the hat that you wear as a clinical supervisor is very different than the hat that someone would wear as a group practice owner. And I know for sure from personal experience and then coaching group practice clinicians, and they're in a state of overwhelm. It's primarily because they're saying they're at their capacity, especially the beginning phases. But also what I help them slow down and pay attention to is that one of the primary reasons why they are at their capacity is because they're within one day switching hats from whatever they do in their personal life to clinical supervisor to program director and trainer to the actual CEO working on the business and planning out the vision of the business. That's a lot. On top of that, most of the time they're seeing therapy clients because they have to wait for the marketing to pick up to be able to fill the other clinicians' caseloads. So I first wanted to just go over that because that has come up in our community in terms of when is the right time to have a group practice, or people I hear will be using the wrong terminology. And I don't correct people, but I will clarify the question if they're in our community and say, are you a group practice owner or are you a clinical supervisor? So regarding the question at hand, is there a right way to pay? So I'm just going to share with you from my business experience what I've learned during this process, and also what our operations and CPA people have taught therapists that are either opening up or expanding, their existing group practice. So first, what I would do if I were in this clinician's shoes, if they have already, because I'm going based off hypotheticals, if they have already hired the intern, because see, this is where it can get a little tricky, okay? If they've already hired, let's just say 3 interns, then First, the question is, what did you promise them? Because we have seen, meaning me and operations people, have seen it where group practice owner does not ask this question before they start hiring any intern. And then they realize that they overpaid because they did not calculate other expenses that goes along with having team members, keeping up the culture of the company in terms of making sure that your people are trained. They underestimated how much time it will go into supervising these individuals, even if they're licensed, like as a group practice owner. So if I were this person and I desired to hire, let's just say 2 interns, I would first look at what does the licensing board state I have to do. We as therapists need to always start with what the licensing board says, because if someone tells you otherwise, you need to know to correct them straight up, okay? Because that's with entity structure and all. So I'm in California. I'm licensed through the Board of Psychology. About 8 years ago, when I had my group practice with 8 therapists, it came down the pipeline, and I think my 3rd year of group practice, that marriage and family therapists, anybody that is master's level clinicians under what's called Board of Behavioral Sciences in California and Board of Psychology, they have to be a W-2 when they've graduated and they're collecting internship hours or associate hours. There is no option. You have to be a W-2. And I can see why. And business owners were in an uproar. But, you know, if I saw people that were in an uproar, I would just say, hey, do you remember working maybe at an agency or as a W-9? And your client didn't show and the agency didn't collect the no-show because maybe the client ghosted them, let's just say. Who's supposed to pay you? What if the agency's rules are, we don't pay you for the no-show until the client pays for the no-show? That means that there are a whole lot of therapists out here sitting in the office not getting paid. It's bad enough we don't get paid every hour that we're there in the office, but now we're saying that we carved out an hour for a client that didn't show online or in person and we still don't get paid. So logistically speaking, I'm always looking at both sides to make sure that something is equal, because I know what it feels like to be an undervalued employee. Okay. So I would first identify what the board says. That's number 1. The next thing I would do is I would go and share this information with whoever helped me structure my entity structure to make sure that I have everything I need to be set up in terms of what I'm supposed to be doing. So as a taxed S Corp, again, I have to, as a psychologist in California, have an S Corp if I am doing business under my license. There is no LLC. There is only the S Corp. I'm either W-9 or S Corp. I can't get no other kind of corporation. I can get nonprofit, right? But S Corp. So that's next. Then I would take all this information and I would share it with my money team, your CPA, whoever is very familiar with entity structure and IRS coding. That is not my expertise, but what I was told, and there's a quiz or something on the IRS website, at least there used to be, where you can actually go answer questions and they will give you a likely answer, which means you still need to consult with a money person. And they will tell you, this is what you most likely need to do is W-2 or you can W-9 them. But remember, it's based on your board. What did they say you can or cannot do? Now, sometimes as business owners, we may think it's easier to W-9. I don't have to worry about taxes. But let me ask you, are you afraid of delayed gratification? Because if you got a real money team, a good CPA or bookkeeper, and a good tax person, then they will tell you that employee taxes are claimable at the end of the year. And on top of that, it positions that person to be able to pay taxes, because I always look out for my team members. It positions them so that they don't have to pay taxes at the end of the year, because here's the thing. They don't have any write-offs. What they gonna write off? One laptop one time? It's a depreciating asset as soon as they start using the MacBook. So what are they gonna write off? Internet, they use yours. So one of the reasons why we converted over from W-9 to W-2 when I had a group practice outside of what the rules were, because the rules were still like, they didn't know. My CPA at the time, she went through a series of just random questions, and I'm just going to share some of them with you. She started asking me questions like, okay, Takesha, do they use your office? And I'm like, yes. She said, do they pay rent? I'm like, no. She said, okay. Do you dictate their schedule? Now, that was a loaded question. And I said, well, they are hired based on flexibility, but I do want to be clear when they apply, I let them know strategically what days of the week and clientele I want them to serve and when. Now, I may say as long as they can work Saturdays, but they can choose their own Saturday hours. I may say they either work 2 day shifts and 1 evening shift, or the evening shift can be swapped out for a Saturday or Sunday shift if they choose, because we've had people work on Sundays. So she said, okay. Then she started saying, like, do they use your computer in the office? I'm like, yeah. She said, do they use your software for billing? I'm like, yeah. She said, do you dictate how you want your paperwork written? I'm like, yeah. She said, just from those questions alone, you're teeter-tottering on W-2, because per the IRS, again, don't quote me here, but this is just what I was told. Okay, you can go to the IRS website and talk to your money team. I was told that pretty much if it sounds like, smells like, walks like, you got more control than the team member, they're a W-2 employee, even if it feels like a family and you're flexible with their schedule. If it feels like you can tell them, hey, we're going to have a once a month consultation and they got to come, that's W-2, that's W-2 status, right? Like, you didn't have a choice when you had a job, right? The only way you can go between those lines, even with a contractor, is if somebody hired me as a contractor and they wanted me to come to meetings, let's just say once a month, they need to draw that up in my contract and I need to agree before I take the job. Because if they decide to throw it on me after I've accepted the job, I can actually say, I'm not doing that. That's not part of my contract. You know what I'm saying? So these are some things that you want to consider. Now, considering all of that, we see how many logistics it is just to like answer a question for group practice, y'all, which is why we work with people who have group practice one-on-one and in a more intimate group even than our private practice program, because there is so much personalization and so many referrals out that it is like redunculous, right? But I love it, but it's personalized on another level. So when it came down to payment, I'll just tell you some things to consider, because I cannot tell you which one is right and which one is wrong, because it has something to do with entity structure, licensing board, and what your money team tells you to do. So when we moved over to W-2, these are the things that I considered. For the unlicensed providers, I looked at calculating how much that person was going to bring in, and keep in mind that this is a buildup. So sometimes we say, okay, we can pay them this much because this is how much we think we're going to anticipate. And then you forget that they only got 1 client and you done did the calculation for 15 clients. So now you under. So you need to take in consideration the slow seasons. So let's just say if at a job, I researched jobs and I was like, not a county job, because I'm not the county. I'm not a state prison. I'm calling out all the jobs that are going to pay more. I'm not a Kaiser, right? That's hiring a licensed psychologist. So I looked at, if this person went and worked at a nonprofit off Indeed.com, what is the median salary? You can look that up on Glassdoor, Indeed.com, Google it. What is the median salary for this particular licensure type and job title? Because I had one person that was being interviewed for my group practice, and they decided to challenge me during the second interview and state that they consulted with an employment attorney, because they were real with me and we realized we clearly weren't a good match. But they questioned if what I was saying about W-2, meaning I'm doing W-2 and we don't do percentage splits, they thought that, I guess I was like kind of like making that up for my own personal gain. I don't know. But when they consulted with the employment attorney, I said, well, share with me what your person said. And this clinician said that basically I was telling the truth, but then the person ended up not taking the position because she said she went online, and because her title is she said, because I'm a psychotherapist in Los Angeles County, I believe that I should be getting paid. Let's just say if for a psychologist, the reimbursement was for insurance, $65. But then for private pay, it may have been closer to like $85. Well, I believe that some therapists only see that the private practice is receiving $125, $150, whatever. And they don't know. I can't even say they forget. They don't know that we have to pay more in malpractice. We have a lot of overhead fees. We have to pay for Gusto more. We have to pay for SimplePractice more. We have to pay for G Suite more. Should I go on? The list is long as hell, right? We have to pay for employment taxes and getting the taxes done for multiple people, right? We have to pay for operations. We got to pay for an HR consultant. These things are not cheap. So the reason I'm listing some of these things off is because these are all the things as to why I cannot answer that question just straight up, and why I'm not even in the scope of my practice able to answer it. But I will tell you the things that you want to consider in order to take the question to your money team. And if your money team just says, I don't know, figure out an amount, the problem you're going to run into, unfortunately, and I've seen clinicians do it, I've done it, is that you will hire a therapist. You will realize that you're overpaying them because they're not holding their weight, that you told them they're going to work 15 hours. They all of a sudden can only work 5. So now they're not even pulling in their weight enough to make their position profitable. So for the clinician who asked this question, first of all, kudos for wanting a group practice and having interns, or desiring and have interns, but there's definitely work to do. So if you are a mental health provider and you want more of the personalized, I'm not a money person, but if you want me to help you build the infrastructure of a group practice, meaning what are the logistics from the clinical side of your hiring processes, job descriptions, hiring processes, onboarding processes, being able to train your staff beyond what is a clinical diagnosis and what is EHR. I'm talking about group practice systems where you can leverage your time, because a lot of y'all, if you own a group practice, you do not have a clinical supervisor like these agencies where you can step back. And that's why I said a lot of group practice owners are tired, because you thought it was passive income and it is not. And that wasn't the question, but I really wanted to provide some perspective as to why these type of questions are great, but they're loaded, and it involves me and the person sitting down, me getting a better understanding about what they already have in place, what has already been done. Like I said, I don't know if this clinician had hired therapists or they're in the midst of them. Have you consulted with an employment attorney? Have you consulted with your CPA? Have you looked at the board to see what their requirements are? If the intern is taking private pay, what is the average amount of private pay that you accept? Or if they're an intern, how much are they going to charge? Very differently probably than a licensed provider. If you're on insurance panels, how much does the insurance panel pay on average? Because you might be on 15. And can the interns get on the insurance panels ethically? Meaning you're not billing for using the client when you pass them off to the intern. That's a whole nother podcast. I can do in October, me and my team member talked about this. It was her suggestion. So I'm like, I think I'm going to do it. In October, I'm going to do, like she said, a spooky series. And it's going to be on the horror stories, the things that I've heard in the mental health business. So with that said, if you want a more one-on-one personalized touch, I want you to head to my store. The link is in the description box. And I simply want you to take a look at what's called our MVP coaching. MVP coaching allows you to have one-on-one with me and Voxer access for additional support. You can renew for as many sessions as you would like, but it's based on availability, meaning a lot of my clients book out 3 sessions at a time because they know one is not going to do it. One is just going to touch the surface. So you book out 3, and then upon the 3, if you want to do another 3 more, that's fine. Once you dip out, it will go to whoever is on the wait list. And right now, I only have 3 spots at the time of this video on September 13th, Friday the 13th. All right. So y'all have a great rest of your day. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like this video if this was helpful. Also share it with another mental health provider who is either thinking about or has a group practice. And is this something that needs to be talked about more? Let me know. If you have specific questions that you're pondering about group practice, let me know so I can determine if it should be answered on the podcast, or maybe we can hop on a call. All right. So if you're on the audio podcast, thank you for tuning in. My name is Dr. TK. If you are new here, hello. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, therapist, business mentor, and digital product mentor. And sometimes, or a lot of time at this point, I'm doing a lot of car chit chats because it is very easy for me to answer these questions when I feel like y'all sitting right in front of me. And I can like talk and just drive and let it flow. And so I hope that y'all come back. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel or the audio podcast. And I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.